Hello, internet friends. My name is Bay. Welcome to the Battle for Azeroth Alpha, and the first pass look at the Vengeance Demon Hunter. And right off the bat, there are some very peculiar changes that some of you out there listening or watching in YouTube land are, if you play a Vengeance Demon Hunter, be really concerned about. That's my right off the bat opener, right? If you don't play Vengeance and you're looking at just seeing what these specs change to, the overall teeter-totter, as I will refer to it a few times in this video, has been smoothed out and I would argue cleaned up a little bit compared to how Vengeance works on live. Vengeance, because of the Warblades and the artifact weapon madness that happens, there's a lot of if this then that happens on so many little small occasions that makes Vengeance either very powerful in certain windows or very weak overall, and only really works well in like super ridiculous, nonsensical, mad AoE phases and whatever. So if you want to look at and listen to all the stuff we figured out today, of course, the VOD will be put up here on YouTube, and of course you can subscribe right here to the YouTube channel where all of those get posted. The different playlists between the VODs and all of the discussion videos go up right here. Or you can check out the Twitch live stream, link down below in the description box, of course, where you can see all the testing happening live for the 2 or 3 or 4 hour segments, and you can help us out with figuring out how it all works. And of course, hit me up on Twitter if I have done something horribly wrong. All linked in the description box down below. This isn't your first rodeo, all right? You know how to do YouTube. You could do the things. But things of note, first off, I talk about Vengeance and the teeter-totter that you have here. And there is a very awkward, first off, the spellbook breaks, Metamorphosis moves way back here, whatever. There is a tank sort of active mitigation, or AM, back and forth that is quite different than it is on live. So right now, on live, if you play any tank, you realize that your active mitigation, your AM, is up all the time. Unless you play a prop paladin, and then good luck, right? You get in those small windows of time where your SOTR falls off and you're dead. So the teeter-totter is very, very, very real with Vengeance specifically, and after testing Vengeance now, more of this style of what Blizzard is doing comes into play, what they're working on. So, first off, we're not looking at Azerite armor. Don't worry about that. We also are going to sort of go over everything baseline here, and then I'll just show off all the talent sort of combinations. There are 2 like combinations of talents that work really well together. And then for tanking though, there's no way to really test this stuff out. I will show you how long I can stand up against the target dummy, the dungeon target dummy, which is actually rather impressive. It's the longest I can on any other tank before now. But the biggest thing is you no longer gain pain from taking damage. There's no pain generation, which is your resource you utilize to use offensively and defensively. You do not gain pain from taking damage anymore. Also, if you notice in the spellbook here, because only Metamorphosis is on this page, you no longer have Empower Wards, which is your spell damage mitigation button. That is gone. The Chaos Brand passive is now here for both the Vengeance and Havoc Demon Hunters, where you debuff the target to take 5% increased magic damage taken. This does not work with some abilities. It's not working on Throw Glaive or Sigil of Flame right now. Probably just a bug, because it doesn't work on the AoE abilities for some reason, but it works on everything else, right? So monks have the physical damage debuff. Demon Hunters have the magic damage debuff. Your Demonic Ward passive has been squished slightly. The armor and stamina bonus are the same. However, the actual passive DR, the damage reduction, is only 10% down from 20. And here's the big one. And this is where we'll start getting all the nitty-gritty and go back and forth to have the whole way that Havoc plays. Your Shattered Souls passive. You still, of course, kill a target, sometimes leaves behind a soul fragment. That is a different type of thing. There are soul fragments and lesser soul fragments and demon souls. So actual soul fragments have a higher amount of healing, but that requires a killing blow. The soul fragment will heal you for a large portion of your health. There are also lesser soul fragments, which heal you now with the sort of damage incoming snapshot that Guardian Druids have in Frenzied Regen or Blood DKs have in Deathstrike. So were you consuming a lesser soul fragment from any means, per individual lesser soul fragment, you'll heal yourself for 8% of all damage taken in the last 5 seconds, with a minimum of 1% of your max health. So if you walk over your soul fragments, if you generate them and eat them through Soul Cleave or Spirit Bomb or whatever other means, those count as lesser soul fragments, and they have the 8% heal per fragment. And then, of course, the Demon Soul consuming is the 20% damage amp for 15 seconds. If you spawn a 6th, the oldest fragment will automatically be eaten. You can only have 5 at a time. They have a 25-yard range from you, so if you actually get far enough away, you will not be able to eat them. And the biggest change overall to the lesser fragment mechanic is this in particular change. Don't worry about the numbers on this dummy. It's level 1 and it takes 100,000% damage. But if you notice something very different, if you are playing Vengeance on live right now, this doesn't happen. All your little purple buddies are here. So Sheer, your main sort of rotational builder, both in 10 pain per use physical damage, always gives you a lesser soul fragment. Every single time you sheer. On live right now, it's a chance. I am also writing down and reporting every single ability that ever says a chance and trying to get Blizzard to actually put the real percentage in the tooltip because it's just for clarity purposes. So Sheer always gives you a fragment, which is a huge change. Not only because of how the teeter-totter works, but how the Shattered Souls update to them is a big deal. Additionally, on the AM side of things, your Mastery Fellblood is changed to the new armor scaling type. So you have a base amount of Mastery. The Mastery stat will increase the armor bonus of Demon Spikes by an additional amount of your agility. Demon Spikes, will bounce over here, increases your armor as a huge multiplier of your agility itself and still gives you that 15% parry chance for 6 seconds. That's unchanged. But there's no flat DR anymore. The actual flat damage reduction you have on live, that's gone. So it's all armor scaling. And there is some double dipping involved in this. So as you gain more base armor, and as you gain higher eye level to give you more base agility, it does amplify the effectiveness of your mastery overall, because that percentage of agility is going to be higher. Additionally, of course, it's 100, write this down, it's 160%, and then adds on, or 140, something like that, 9, 10, 11, 12. I have a lot of notes. The Demon Spikes gives you the flat armor modifier, and then, of course, your mastery on top of that. Versatility would be behind it, right, with the flat DR. Armor behind it would be flat DR. So the against current target thing is kind of interesting. That's in a tooltip now for armor classes. For tanks, you can see your armor damage reduction against current targets. And then you can also see the armor cap in the game is changed to 85%, which I believe that is a overall different amount from live. Let me know in the comments below. We didn't actually dig into that too much. But because this doesn't exist unless you have weak auras or something like that, where you can see the armor against current target. Now, if I look at this boss dummy, it'll just go back to the actual amount, right? So that's a slightly different change. But that's changed. So Soul Cleave now brings in 2 fragments, no longer all. Still has, of course, the cleave effect, but it has no pain scaling anymore with how much it heals you for. It's just it heals you for a flat amount per use, period. So Sheer generates pain, always gives you a soul fragment. Soul Cleave will pull in 2 fragments, always heal you for a flat amount, no scaling amount based on your pain consumed. Demon Spikes, again, scales up with your agility and a percentage of that from your mastery that amplifies it, right? So you get this huge spike, literally, in your armor, and then it falls off, and there's quite a steep cliff of armor fall off here. But this is where the teeter-totter comes into play. So because of the new Shattered Soul workaround with the 8% per soul fragment, lesser soul fragment consumed, you'll have these moments of time where you're very defensive in the Demon Spike window, and then very weak outside of it. But because you're taking more damage, then your lesser soul fragments heal you for more. Right? So just a short little test here against this dummy. You'll notice the damage intake is quite low when Demon Spikes is active. And watch how much this dummy will start hitting me for regardless without it. Let's try to heal back up a little bit here. Demon Spikes will fall off now. And now you're going to get quite chunked. Right? Getting really hit really hard. Go back in a Demon Spike window. All of a sudden, it's about half that damage. Easily. Quite easy to survive with Demon Spikes active. Not easy to survive without Demon Spikes active. Because, again, this teeter-totter. But playing around that properly will definitely show the better tanks from the lesser skilled ones. Because you'll be able to store up your fragments and be able to time your soul cleaves and time around that lesser soul fragment consuming window when you're taking damage when you don't have your Demon Spikes up. Demon Spikes also has a cooldown change to 20 seconds per recharge, up from 15, I believe, on live. Yep. So lowered by haste still, but that does put a little more power behind the haste synergy. Going over this, there was a really real possibility that the stat priority for Vengeance, will probably hit a certain haste plateau or a certain haste breakpoint, and then mastery and versatility stacking will be huge. The healing potential of Verse and the armor potential of mastery is massive, and because you don't have any real way to deal with magic damage outside of one baseline, then you'll have to really work around healing yourself with Soul Cleave and Lesser Soul Fragments to counteract magic damage. Double Jump still here, of course. Everything else remains the same. Your Sigil of Misery, where is it? Right there. It has a slight reduction in the Fear Disorient down to 20 seconds from 30. Your Imprison cooldown was changed to match the same one that the monks have with their Incapacitate. So it's a 1 minute cooldown that lasts for 1 minute. So up from 15 seconds, the cooldown on live. Right now, the effect remains the same. Fiery Brand, which is the only other way baseline that you could actually deal with magic damage, is 8 seconds base with 40% reduced damage from that target to you. But no other synergies are there and brought over from your artifact. That is still the same. Consume Magic was nerfed slightly, has a 10-yard range, down from 20 yards. And additionally, to go over other baseline changes, Fell Eruption, the single target stun, Blade Turning, that terrible talent, as well as Demonic Infusion have all been removed. And then, of course, we'll go over talents in a little bit more here in a moment. But outside of that, Infernal Strike is the same. Sigil of Flame lasts the same amount. Glide, Fiery Brand, all that stuff. Immolation Aura is still 20 pain over 6. That is still the exact same. Same cooldown reduction, all that kind of good stuff. That is all the same. Torment, all that remains the same. Nothing's changed with Spectral Sight. Still does this slow, and you see the invisible-ish targets or whatever. It's weird that you can see the target dummy that's inside this drum. It's quite neat, because the drum is supposed to be the target, but it's sticking out, and whatever. It's weird. But that's Spectral Sight. Throw-Glaive, again, doesn't apply your brand for some reason, and neither does your Sigil of Flame, like I went over earlier, which is probably just a bug. So that'll probably be worked on here before we go live. But everything else is the same. Everything else is unchanged. So just the main AMDR cycle with Shear, Soul Cleave, and your Demonic Wards into Fell Blood and Shattered Souls has changed quite significantly. Now, talent-wise, we'll sort of roll through these. So Razor Spike still remains at a 15% physical damage amp, mostly just a squish because of the number squish. Not a nerf directly. The nerf is the snare. So across the board, because of all these CC changes, and again, you've lost Fel Eruption, you don't have your stun anymore as Avengers Demon Hunter, your snare with Razor Spikes also now is only 20 seconds. If you use Razor Spikes at all. Agonizing Flame is unchanged, still movement speed sprint on your Immolation Aura and the extra damage. And Missile Strike is unchanged, the extra 10 yards on Infernal Strike and the cooldown reduced by 8 seconds. Feast of Souls still the same. Fallout remains the same, but again, it just has a chance, so you don't know how much of the chance is for Lesser Soul Fragments. And Burning Alive remains the same. I will bring up real quick with Burning Alive, because it does bounce around. It makes your what's it called? Your Fiery Brand bounce. I will jump ahead to Charred Flesh, which is from your artifact weapon rolled forward. The Fiery Brand increases the fire damage your abilities deal to the target by 20%. This does not have a synergy on live right now, but it does in alpha and going into BFA. So it actually updates the entire tooltip that the bounced targets do take increased damage from you. Fire damage from you, of course, but that does work. Burning Alive and Charred Flesh do synergize together. Fellblade remains here at 30 pain per use, and Flame Crash is still here, so Flame Crash and Abyssal Strike are still very much a synergy there as well as Concentrated Sigils. Your sigil tier is unchanged, so your same Concentrated Sigil of Chains and Quickening Sigils. Now, a change tier here, your 104 tier, which I think is really, really neat. Soul Rending. You've lost Charred Warblades, which is your passive. Your fire damage heals you for X. You now can take Soul Rending, which is 5% leech, and you'll gain 25% additional, that's a additive benefit, in meta. Right now on live, it's just the 50% in meta, that's it. But because of the Feed the Demon, I believe, what's it called? Or Fueled by Pain, sorry, the whole demon thing where you eat soul fragments and you turn it into your meta form sometimes. Fueled by Pain is gone from that synergy, so Soul Rending is a little bit weaker in this regard. But when I bring over talent builds in a little bit, you'll see what this this power goes in here. Feed the Demon was the next part I was going to go over. It was nerfed to 0.5 seconds whenever you eat soul fragments, which I'm not sure if this is not needed because of the increased cooldown on Demon Spikes. But again, they're trying to make the teeter-totter of in AMDR and outside of your AMDR window, so we'll see if that works. And the new Fracture is very fun. Fracture replaces Shear, has a 4.5 second cooldown with 2 charges, generates 25 pain, so up from 10. Generates 2 lesser soul fragments per use, up from 1, and deals basically double the physical damage. But because it has a charge-based system, you do have the very bursty potential to generate fragments. However, I will caution trying to use Fracture with a few different talent builds because you won't be able to keep up with your cooldowns. But we'll see. Fracture and Fellblade together feel very good. Let me get out of combat real quick here. So we have Charred Flesh right now. It doesn't really matter. Let's take Fellblade if I can get... There we go. So it still works. It says Shear has a chance to reset the cooldown, but obviously it still works with Fellblade. And your Fracture has a chance to do it the same way. This, for very single target focus, feels quite good. The smoothness of generation, anyway, between the abilities. But because you're not using as many Fractures as you would be using Shears, you will get less Fellblade resets, of course. But that's because they did buff Fellblade to 30 pain a use, maybe to sort of offset that if you take this build. But as you can see right now, the pain generation is quite fine. That orc is just kind of standing there looking at me funny. But I like this. It feels really good. If you have to be really careful where you don't overcap and waste a bunch of pain. So you do have a whole bunch of moments where you have to just use a bunch of pain without lesser soul fragments. But again, you still get that flat heal from using Soul Cleave anyway. So Fracture feels quite good. And it does feel good with different builds, of course, but that's why Soul Rending is really powerful for AoE. Fracture is really good for single target. Feed the Demon, I'm not sure. Honestly, not sure where this falls into play. Fel Devastation was updated. Does not cost any pain to use. Still deals fire damage over 2 seconds. It ticks 6 times a second for 2 seconds for 12 ticks plus haste. So by default, you'll see 13 ticks with 1 morning breath. It heals you per tick, and it only will heal you if it deals damage. Causing damage also heals you for an amount. This does not have a weird double dip with versatility. Versatility's damage amp will increase the damage dealt, which will then, of course, stack with soul rending as you're used to with charred warblades right now. But you do not gain additional leeched healing from verse as well. It just goes to a 1 stack just on the damage amp. But the flat healing that is done by Fellow Devastation is then upgraded, of course, by your versatility at the same ratio. There's no weird, like, double, triple dipping madness happening with Fellow Devastation. We looked at it. It's still not broken or whatever. But that means that Fellow Devastation just becomes this 1-minute cooldown without a pain cost to use as a really snappy heal. Gluttony is the fueled by pain passive from your artifact, where consuming a soul fragment has a chance, again, reporting these all a chance abilities to actually list the chance, to activate Metamorphosis. This would, of course, synergize well with soul rending, but it is an RNG effect to turn into the demon form. So I'm not entirely sure how reliable that's going to be to use that as a way to not die, because a lot of tanks don't like chances to not die. You like to not die and be able to control your not dying potential. So Gluttony is going to have that same, like, here and there you'll turn into a demon, but there's no improved shear anymore because the improved shear effect is baseline. And of course, if you take Fracture or replaces shear, there's no benefit there either. So Gluttony doesn't really have a lot of... It just barely will proc. I don't know if it needs something else or it needs to be a longer buff, like 8 seconds or 10 seconds when you actually get the proc. Because you quite literally can't ever proc it. It just doesn't happen. And I'm trying to stack up Fractured Souls here to eat, you know, 2 and then 2 again. There's 1, my first proc, right? Well, that'll bring me over to what meta has changed to, and that's nothing. It's the exact same thing. So it's still the 7 pain every second, which of course works in Gluttony. It's the double armor. The armor doubling, though, is hilarious inside of a Demon Spike now. So if you look at my armor, I will just meta to double, but then add Demon Spikes to it. So you went an extra, like, almost 4% up, I believe. I think from the base amount was like 63. So that's just the regular double armoring. Obviously, there is a bit of a diminishing return, but just Demon Spikes alone was, yeah, 63. So combining the two, the armor benefit of Metamorphosis, of course, is only on the base armor, but that's where the power comes in with Gluttony, is because of the armor potential and why Blizzard wants you to care about armor so much as any tank now. That's a good thing, but it's just random. It's not that good. And the new Spirit Bomb, which I'm going to argue that it's been nerfed, but also changed. So it consumes only 3 soul fragments at the cost of 30 pain. On live right now, I believe it eats all soul fragments. Yep, it will eat all soul fragments, and it doesn't cost anything. So now it costs something, only eats 3, deals fire damage per, it still applies frailty for 20 seconds. It heals you for 10% of the damage you deal to targets that are frail. So that is the same. It feels very good with Fracture, because you can easily build up to those soul fragments. The new animation is really nice too. That goes without saying. Whoop. But without Fracture, it's totally fine to use, but you have to use 3 shears. However, I think the main benefit of Spirit Bomb, to sort of put sort of a combining element to this, and we'll cap it off with the 110 talents, is that Spirit Bomb puts up a reverse leech on all targets hit. But then Soul Rending is this flat leech. So then if you take Spirit Bomb, and you're looking at this crazy AoE style build, if you stack it with Soul Rending and Flame Crash, and Fallout, and Abyssal Strike, right, and then Concentrated Sigils, you have a huge potential now to have a very AoE-focused build, because you're going to have all of the leech, all of the frailty, and once you, of course, Spirit Bomb into frail targets, you heal again. So using Spirit Bomb at 3 and not hitting Soul Cleave makes the most sense, I think, with this build. If you're AoE tanking it in, you can see all of the triage healing flying in, which you're used to on live right now. But again, on live right now, you need to be careful when you use Infernal Strike because of how finicky it is to eat your own lesser soul fragments. They easily disappear. But this is very much a very single target focused build, I think, anyway. Or, sorry, not single target, versus the single target focused build. Very AoE focused build. I don't know if this would work very well on single target because you're not going to gain a lot of benefit from all of the leech and frailty on multiple targets. It could. There might be some scaling potential for it, but you more or less will replace using Soul Cleave at all and just use Spirit Bomb. You're stacking the leech. You're stacking the Spirit Bomb frailty. That feels pretty good. At least in a mass AoE sense. But that's where Spirit Bomb lands. I don't think it's going to be strong enough on single target because the pain requirement, and it's not really going to do that much more damage overall on a pure single target benefit because it does slow you down by extra globals. Now again, fracturing with it, Fracture and Fallout will help with that, but is that better than Fellow Devastation? That's up to you decide and math to decide, because you can do things like this. The amount of healing you can put out with a single target build, this will bring me over to Soul Barrier. Soul Barrier was updated and fixed and sort of streamlined. The Soul Barrier, I don't know if you've seen the Soul Barrier current math, but the current version costs 10 pain. The BFA version costs nothing. Still a 30-second cooldown. You shoot yourself for 12 seconds, absorbing 2,250% of attack power times the current percent health you're at, plus 23% of your attack power, times the attack power coefficient, whatever the hell that is, times, again, your percent health in damage. And then consuming soul fragments will add an attack power coefficient times percent health to the shield. And of course, it will eat all soul fragments within 25 yards. That remains the same. And it has the minimum amount shielding, which has been removed. Because they've removed it because now Soul Barrier has a much cleaner and stronger base effect to it. So it's just, at least the current build, it was 600% attack power, which is the attack power, weapon damage, coefficient math craziness. And then, of course, all the soul fragments up to 5, which is at 120% attack power for each fragment. There's no extra after you put up barrier that you can pull in more fragments and eat them and put them in the shield. But combining Soul Barrier and Fell Devastation, again, talking about these guaranteed survivability things, we'll go with Fracture and Fellblade here and Razor Spikes. Just because. We'll take Quickening Sigils here. Usually it's a little better on pure single target damage versus concentrated with Flame Crash here. But there is quite an ease of use that has changed with this, at least with the math side of things. It is a huge shield. It's still going. It's like 18,000 shield, I think, at this current stage. It's 18k. It's almost your entire health pool. A little bit shy, obviously, but it's quite a bit. And with no random pain costs, but again, you have to generate your pain yourself because you don't get pain from taking damage anymore. This sort of brings you into this pure single target survivability stance, which I will then use another barrier here. And try to get some more healing going before I get wrecked by this guy. There we go. Yeah. I'm sort of just spamming Soul Cleave. If you'd want to use Soul Cleaves after your window of time. Let's see. There's a little bit of wiggle room here. If I can last one more rotation, let's put a Metamorphosis here. just to get the extra pain generation to spam more soul cleaves. Keep myself alive for a moment. Whoops, that's the wrong button. Let's go to tiers, do one of these, go to 5. There's 5, so we'll do this. Into that. And almost full health again. We're at 7 stacks on the dummy. We'll keep going here. I'm sort of just hitting Fracture sort of randomly for damage, which is not ideal because you want to, I mean, you want to obviously weave your Fractures properly anyway, but oh, it's got 8 stacks now. Oh, Demon Spike, save me. I wonder if I can, I don't know, one more. Let me actually wiggle to those to actually pick those up. I don't know if I can last one longer. No, I'm going to die. Ah! Oh, my goodness. There we go. And Fellblade one more time into these. And then run away. Get out of here. Okay. So that's 10 stacks on the dummy. That doesn't deal double damage. This is a 112 boss, like a dungeon boss dummy. So the power of soul barriering, and then if you combine soul barrier into a demonic or demon spikes window and fellow devastation, you see how much burst healing you can do, which is why, again, gluttony, but this is pure single target. Spirit Bomb is not going to make you stay this alive on pure single target. It's just not going to. You're going to die. Last Resort is unchanged. And your new talent, leaving the best for last, is Void Reaver. It's very boring. Enemies struck by Soul Cleave deal 8% less damage to you for 4 seconds. So the only way I see Void Reaver being usable, because Soul Barrier, obviously, as I showed off, is very single target, which you could use it for AoE, right? You totally can, but using it for boss mechanic, like taunt swaps or whatever, seems like a much more powerful use of Soul Barrier because they cleaned up all the math nonsense or whatever, right? Void Reaver works really well in AoE. So to go back over again to like a Spirit Bomb build, like Flame Clash, take that. Move over here. Get that out of here. So we'll go back to Soul Rending, Concentrated Sigils. So with Void Reaver, because your Soul Cleave hits in that 8-yard frontal cone, this just adds more on top of everything else that you're doing, right? So you're going to frail everything. You're going to have passive leech. You're going to be healing off of a ton of stuff. And whenever you Soul Cleave, which you'd have to then weave your Soul Cleaves between your Spirit Bombs, you then debuff everything to deal less damage to you. So this style, you'd probably only keep Frailty active, but you'd want to keep Void Reaver active because it's boring, but it's really strong. Making AoE packs deal a flat 8% less damage to you is going to be beneficial. But if that's more beneficial than just spamming that for the heal, I'm not sure, right? I don't know where the single target component of Void Reaver will come into play, since flat 8% reduction is just that. Last Resort comes into play a lot more for like raiding insurance when you're first raiding, and it's like, you know, oops, I almost died. Or you can also cheese things with it, like once a fight, because of the 8-minute internal cooldown. But let me know in the comments down below what you think of the Void Reaver possibility versus the simplified and smoothed out Soul Barrier. But in that case, that is the Vengeance Demon Hunter. The new Fracture feels good. Fracture Fellblade does feel good. Fellblade with other specs feels really weird. I think Feed the Demon is too weak. Gluttony is probably also too weak in comparison. I argued that Concentrated Sigils was also too weak, but if they buffed it, it might be too good, because Concentrated and Flame Crash are very powerful for actual doing damage, but Quickening Sigils works better outside of that, because the AoE component for CC is better because of the cooldown reduction on Quickening Sigils. So you can actually CC a lot more with your Sigil of Silence and your Sigil of Misery, versus you can have a longer Silence or a 2-second longer Disorient, oh boy, with Concentrated. So I almost wonder if Concentrated Sigils should add a little bit extra to each individual Sigil itself, because the at yourself casting doesn't mean anything because you already can do that with an at player macro. But overall, I think they smoothed out some things. They sort of took away some of the rough edges that Vengeance had and worked out how its teeter-totter for damage mitigation will work out for the Vengeance Demon Hunter. Again, the best part about it is the new animation for Spirit Bomb. It should be called Soul Bomb. You're eating soul fragments. Whatever. Spirit Bomb is a Goku thing. Looks nice, though. Again, subscribe to the YouTube channel if it's your first time here and you want to keep up to date with all the first, second pass testing. I have a bunch of Island Expedition VODs from my PAX East trip coming up soon, depending on when you're watching this. And of course, check out the Twitch live stream if you want to be part of the testing as we go forward. Havoc is next. And go vote on the poll on my Twitter or the polls in the future for picking what classes and what order I do them in. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next first pass testing video during Battle of Azeroth.